it. We're going to just go into it. We're going to get into it. So I have here the Area 51 alien interview from 1997. Now, this is no puppet. This is going to be the real deal. Just letting you people know now, disclaimer. This is going to be the real deal. And I'm going to skip a little bit ahead because I want us to have enough time for us to talk about it.
Having read a report of a tragic misunderstanding between military personnel and alien beings in the late 70s. Lazar states that it had to do with bullets the MPs were carrying, and that the bullets might explode, possibly due to a field the aliens had generated in that area. This encounter supposedly resulted in the deaths of all the humans involved by head wounds.
But if there was ever a large-scale alien presence at Area 51, Lazar saw no evidence of it doing his work at S4 in the late 80s. Is it possible that the deadly misunderstanding of 10 years earlier brought human-alien cooperation to an end?
In his September 21, 1987 speech to the UN General Assembly, President Reagan himself did little to dispel the notion that this deadly misunderstanding brought human-alien cooperation to an end.
In our obsession with antagonisms of the moment, we often forget how much unites all the members of humanity. Perhaps we need some outside universal threat to make us recognize this common bound. I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
Now, think about that, right? He's literally telling you that, look, we're going to eventually do Project Bluebeam, and you motherfuckers is going to be scared of the aliens coming. He's literally just saying, hey, what if we had a huge alien threat, an invasion come to make us understand the aliens, okay? But what he's pretty much saying is that, yo, we're going to pretty much unleash Project Bluebeam upon y'all all, and this is what's going to make you all succumb to the New World Order.
Are the inconsistencies between various tales coming out of Area 51 evidence that these stories are lies? Or are the discrepancies the result of an intentional campaign of disinformation designed to discredit any elements of truth that may be reaching the public?
If so, how does Victor fit into the jigsaw puzzle of questionable witnesses to the alien presence at Area 51? Is he a hoaxer, a government dupe, or a frightened whistleblower with the hard evidence to back up his story?
I made it very clear to Victor that his credibility was the entire issue here, and that everybody's going to think this is a hoax, and that how are they going to possibly verify this? What he said was, you can do anything you want in terms of verified, any type of due diligence. He will answer whatever questions put forward. We could do whatever type of checking. We could bring in experts. We could have the tape tested. We could, in fact, he encouraged all of these aspects. He just did not want his face and his real name revealed.
At Coleman's insistence, Victor agreed reluctantly to appear on camera, but only in disguise, in shadow, and with his voice electronically altered. The questions were agreed upon in advance, but during the actual interview, the discussion occasionally deviated from Victor's approved questions.
What is your occupation at Area 51?
I won't answer that. I have had reason to be present at Area 51, but I'm not going to clarify whether or not I was there as an employee.
Are you saying you were there as a visitor?
I'm not going to specify why or in what capacity I was there, only that I was there.
Can you tell us how many times you were there?
When I agreed to this, my fundamental ground rule was that I would not be asked to divulge personal data that might help pinpoint my identity, If you continue to ask questions that are out of bounds, I won't hesitate to terminate this interview.
Are you saying that the number of times you were present at Area 51 is enough to pinpoint your identity?
Any specifics will narrow the field of suspects. Of course, I could lie. Let's say I've been there 47 times, or anyway more than once.
Let's turn to the tape itself. The copy you've supplied is not the original tape.
No,
Was the original at Area 51 when you copied it?
that's out of bounds.
Is it fair to assume that the copying of tapes at Area 51 is heavily restricted?
You can assume anything you like. I would say that's a fair assumption. That's obvious. I will say that this tape was copied under special circumstances. Otherwise, copying it would have been impossible.
Can you be more specific?
More specific? Okay, I'm sure they've figured this much out already. Recently, there was a wholesale transfer of video documentation from analog tape to digital disc storage. In a couple of instances, this allowed data to leak from a highest security system to a less high security system. Even so, this particular tape was the only... I think that's about all I'll say about that.
Was there something about this particular clip that made it more accessible to be copied?
Not necessarily, no.
Was there something about the content that caused them to file it differently or give it special handling?
This interview is terminated.
The interview resumed only after a discussion of the ground rules.
Have you personally seen the alien being that appears in the tape?
Yes, I have, but I stress I was not necessarily present at the interview session that appears on the tape. I'm not going to be specific. I may have encountered the being at another time.
What can you tell us about the alien interview we're about to see?
This one is rather recent, very late in the series. The interview process has been ongoing since the being arrived, which was in 1989. Approximately twice a month, they sit it down for a session that generally lasts from 3 to 5 hours. If they try to go longer than that, or if they schedule the sessions more frequently, the being becomes unresponsive. There's a fair amount of infighting among the scientists from different disciplines to get their questions asked.
What has the alien revealed?
Various minor technical details of the saucers. The physicists and engineers are frankly frustrated. They feel the being is withholding information. Possibly concepts are getting lost because all the information has to come through a telepath. But also it may be that the bulk of their scientific knowledge is just too advanced to be translated into our primitive conceptual framework.
In that part, what the alien pretty much would even be able to tell, like, listen, I could tell y'all how shit works, but y'all not going to understand it any damn way.
It's analogous to if a human scientist were to try to translate quantum mechanics into the grunts and screeches of a chimpanzee.
That's not a very flattering comparison.
Frankly, there's a high attrition rate for scientists in the program. You'd think they'd be energized by the challenge, but a lot of them take the ego deflation very hard when they find out not only how much they don't know, but how much they aren't even capable of understanding.
What else has the alien communicated?
Oddly enough, the being seems to have a much easier time communicating spiritual concepts.
This isn't the actual interview. So this part right here is just a mock version of the actual interview that they're going to show in a minute.
The human body is a vehicle.
As you can see at the bottom, it said recreation. This is a recreation of what the
vessel
actual
must be maintained
interview they're going to show is.
to serve the spirit with maximum efficiency. And is a vehicle, a vessel.
Oddly enough, the being seems to have a much easier time communicating spiritual concepts.
Listen to what they say about how aliens pretty much look at the human body. Or a body in general.
The human body is a vehicle, a vessel. And the vessel must be maintained to serve the spirit with maximum efficiency. But a broken vessel can be replaced. The human spirit, or the soul, can have many vessels.
Is the process natural or technological?
Both are one. Technology is a natural excrescence of humanity. Technology is a process the vessel uses to perfect itself.
So what they're actually recreating also, you know, you have to think about this. So the alien can't talk English. Okay? It can't speak. So what he's doing is doing a telepath. They're pretty much doing telepathic talking to the interpreter. The alien is pretty much telepathically letting you know what he's thinking and what he's saying. The telepath is basically being a teleprompter to the interpreter. And the interpreter is relaying the information to that guy.
Transference of the soul from vessel to vessel. Did your kind create the mechanics of it, or is it a natural... Did it predate the intellectual creation?
Before understanding must come acceptance.
Before understanding must come acceptance. So what he's pretty much going on about, what they ask the alien is, what is the purpose of life and how the human body actually works, and he pretty much responded saying the human body is a vessel, which is another thing that we actually were going over on this channel pretty much a couple of the last videos, and how the human body is nothing more than a vessel for the spirit or the soul. Okay, thus why you have the soul catcher and soul recycler on the moon base, of course. So this, of course, ties into that as well. Everything is coming together. Okay, everything should start to make sense now by this time. Okay, if you watched the last few videos that we've done. The soul or spirit that inhabits the vessel, okay, which it can inhabit many different vessels. It doesn't necessarily have to be, which shout out to my homeboy DJ Beard Gang, we were talking earlier, and how the spirit of, say, for example, Nipsey Hussle, or even Static Major, okay? Different souls can be recycled into different vessels, okay? That's just how that can actually work as well. Well, that explains why people be looking at me crazy when I'm thinking about some wild shit they actually know. Right, that's true too. The telepathic energy is very real. Telekinesis is very real as well. Thus, what you are seeing put on display here, the alien has to use telekinesis in order to let the interpreter know what he's actually saying.
It's not technological.
Well, I think what he's trying to say is that the question is meaningless. The soul can travel from vessel to vessel. Reincarnation, transfiguration, whatever. It's real.
What I'm getting at is, does he know how it's done?
Victor uses the term vessels to refer to the alien's conception of the body as a disposable vehicle for the soul. The UFO cult known as Heaven's Gate used the term containers in a similar context. The mass suicide of the Heaven's Gate cultists illustrates the dark side of accepting such ideas at face value. Doe, the Heaven's Gate cult leader, preached that humans can pass from container to container. The mysterious Victor, on the other hand, harbors no such belief.
So if you remember, of course, again, crazy how we're going back to this video game, Grand Theft Auto had, I can't remember the actual name of them now, but they had an actual occult in the mountains in the video game, to where there were people that pretty much believed in reincarnation, similar to what they were talking about here with the Heaven's Gate occult. In same exact thing. They pretty much didn't believe in death. They only believed in reincarnation. And there is no death. There's just, you travel from vessel to vessel. So the guy wasn't wrong. Of course, it was, mass suicide and mass homicide. Everybody died. Everyone actually did fucking die. But the theory is actually true, to where their souls and spirits left the vessels.
In his interview, recorded months before the Rancho Santa Fe tragedy, Victor made his attachment to his own earthly vessel abundantly clear.
And let me just state here publicly, to head off any clever ideas anyone might be having, I have never been, am not now, and never will be suicidal.
But how would the public know if something happened to you since we don't know who you are?
Thus the title Rebirth.
I'm taking care of that, trust me. If something happens to me, if I die, people will know who I am.
Do you think it's a reassuring sign that these aliens can communicate with us on a spiritual plane?
It would be nice to think so, but I'm not sure if it's really such an achievement considering the mismatch between our intellects. I mean, you're not going to have much luck making your dog understand calculus, but if you pet him on the head and say, "Good dog," aren't you communicating spiritually? And doesn't the animal control officer say, "Good dog," when he comes to put some poor stray to sleep? Doesn't the vet try to reassure the animal just before he spays it? When you're dealing with beings whose intellect is so far beyond your own, I don't think it's safe to assume they have your best interests at heart.
What about the content of the tape segment you brought?
As I said, this is late in the series. In fact, it's quite close to the end.
Because of his unwillingness to reveal his own identity, Victor's story stands or falls on the credibility of the tape he supplied. Here, exclusively for the first time anywhere, is the uncut, uninterrupted alien interview tape, shown in its entirety in real time.
And I'm going to help you guys out. We're going to look at it over here, actually. And I'm going to put myself away. So what you're watching there also with the jumping light is pretty much the alien talking. As the light jumps, that's him talking pretty much. So what pretty much started to happen here, and they're going to explain in a second, is the alien pretty much started to have a little bit of difficulty with almost like the oxygen in the room is what he was having difficulty with. And that's what they were talking about, where they can only stretch it between 3 to 5 hours because after a while, the alien starts to become very difficult as well. But in this particular time, the alien was pretty much becoming weak as well. the alien had pretty much started to spit up, and that's why they started to like wipe his mouth pretty much.
You removed the soundtrack from the tape before you turned it over to this program.
That's correct. I can't allow the voices of the project personnel to be heard by the general public. There's a very good chance their family or friends on the outside might recognize them.
Isn't your purpose in releasing this tape to expose Area 51 to the world?
My purpose is to expose the existence of the aliens, not compromise these individuals. I made the decision to come forward. I'm taking precautions to protect my own identity, and I don't think it's fair for me to put these others in danger of exposure. In any case, the interview on the tape went nowhere. It was interrupted, as you'll see.
Can you describe for us what we're seeing?
All right, we're looking at the interview suite at S4. It's kept dark for the comfort of the aliens. The figure who is just barely visible in the left foreground is the telepath, and behind the camera is a raked seating area for observers. Although in this case, I believe the only other person present was a military aide. The alien is seated behind a glass partition in a biocontainment area, which is maintained at biosafety level 2, the lowest designation. That's primarily for the protection of the aliens, not us. The theory is that if they were going to infect us with an alien bug, it would have happened 50 years ago. In fact, all the indications are the aliens eliminated microbial and viral life from their own ecosystem long ago. They aren't susceptible to our diseases directly, but it has been shown that microbes can reproduce and form colonies within their respiratory systems, which tends to exacerbate the debilities they seem to suffer anyway in our environment. In fact, you can see here the alien is beginning to flag. The interview was not going well. The telepath was trying to clarify some points from a previous interview, but he wasn't receiving coherent responses. As you can see, the being is in real distress. At this point, the telepath is sending out a message to the medical staff. He's trying to communicate with the alien, but he's getting no response. There's very little he can do. There's no direct connection between his space and the biocontainment area. That's the aide stepping in on the right. The medical staff should be there by now. They're slow in responding. There they are. I have to say the medical personnel at S4 are less than first rate. They tend to be selected for their willingness to keep secrets rather than their medical competence. By the way, he's not shining that light into the eyes. It looks that way, but in fact he's checking for hemorrhaging around the eye sockets and in the nasal cavity. I'm sorry. It's very hard for me to watch this.
Yeah, I can see them.
You're asking me if I think this is real? That have I finally seen a space alien? I don't know. But I do know this. I know that this is not a tricked up version like the alien autopsy. It doesn't attempt to distract you away from the alien. It doesn't have that cinema verite, black and white. It doesn't go to great lengths to try to fool the audience. Straight ahead.
So the reason why the audio was cut from the video was pretty much to protect the voices that were conducting the interview. He didn't want the people that were asking the alien questions voices to be heard out of fear of their identity being caught, which was very smart. So he pretty much just blanketed the whole audio and just cut it out completely so that you couldn't hear what the interpreter was asking, you couldn't hear what the questionnaire was asking, you couldn't hear the military staff, you couldn't hear anything.
It's an alien on tape. Pretty much the way you'd probably film it. But the point is this. What if it is real?
In evaluating the authenticity of the alien interview tape, the logical place to begin is with the videotape itself. What can the technical details of this recording tell us about its origin? Rocket Pictures sent Victor's original tape to the Phoenix laboratory of renowned image analyst Jim Delatoso. Using the most up-to-date digital technology, Delatoso tried to determine the tape's authenticity.
I've been exploring, looking at different aspects of the image itself to develop questions for a matrix on, is it real or is it fake? I grabbed a frame in the computer and we're outputting it now in digital format, and you can see that we have an absolutely solid picture. What we've done is taken the picture and moved it over so that we can look at the information that's in between the frames. Now, when we look at the motion video, we can see that it still is not bad. And when we have this little indicator down here, it tells me that the original image was transferred using some kind of time-based corrector. These are video screens up here, television, video monitors, and they're off at an angle. If this was shot using a video camera with lines on it, we would see moire patterns up there, and we don't see the moire patterns. So there's a probability that this was shot originally on film, possibly a film stock like 7252 or 7247, depending on the lighting.
The idea that these images may have originated on film is in direct contradiction to Victor's statement that the interview was shot on video. On closer inspection, Delatoso decided the images could indeed have been recorded by a video camera under certain specific conditions.
In this case, I get the sense of it that this was originally created using either film, transferred telecine to beta, but then this is the third generation, or it was taped under very low light conditions with the video gain boosted probably 12 dB.
Even the emotionless analysis of a computer cannot provide a definitive answer. Delatoso's efforts yield...
The fact that a whole image analyst had to look at this shit and couldn't off bat say, yo, this shit is fake, should tell you that this shit might be real.
Tantalizing hints, but in the end, they only increase the mystery.
One of the key things about this creature are its eyes.
Like the other experts, video analyst Jim Delatoso was emotionally affected by what he saw. He took the tape very seriously and offered this personal opinion.
If someone faked this, I don't like these people. I think it's a bad thing for people to do, because if extraterrestrials come here, it's an incredibly important thing to understand who they are and why are they coming here. If this is not faked, I think we've got a glimpse here of a sense of communication with someone who came from a long distance away.
When asked his opinion of the alien interview, Adair was careful to answer only in terms of his own experiences.
If you're referring to the film where it's aliens being interrogated at Area 51, I don't know. I've never seen a UFO in my life. I've never seen aliens pickled in a jar or anything like that. But I know I saw an engine that wasn't from our terrestrial technology. If you look at an engine like that, it came out of a craft. If it come out of a craft, then that craft has occupants. So it's very logical to assume then that those occupants could still be here and they could be interrogating them, or they could have downed another craft since 1971.
Makeup artist John Criswell has provided special effects creatures for many Hollywood motion pictures and television shows, such as Spaced Invaders and Babylon 5. hired by Rocket Pictures to create the aliens for the recreation segments of this program, Criswell was very interested to finally see the real thing.
By Hollywood standards, I would say it's a pretty decent puppet. Well, to be honest with you, I would love to buy this being real, but it's probably a hoax. Well, I think this is a really cool design, and it's a great concept, but I think I could have done better. Whoever did this, I mean, they could have a job in Hollywood in a minute, no problem. This one has a much creepier quality than the Alien autopsy tape, I think. That one I definitely didn't buy just because of the way it laid on the table. There was a couple of things. This actually, whoever did this was, or if someone did this, they were very clever because it hides a lot of stuff. So that's what makes me kind of disbelieve it a little bit. But, who knows?
Criswell thought the alien exhibited movements that would be difficult to fake.
There are moments when this looks very real, and I don't know how they did certain little things about this. So right when
you can tell the more the visual effects guy watched this, the more he got fucked up and creeped out about the fact that, oh shit, this might actually be a real alien. I've been doing makeup and doing masks for all this damn time, and I'm actually seeing one of the real fucking things, and this don't look like no puppet that I made.
I'd say that it's definitely a puppet. He moves a certain way, or he'll lift up in the frame and all that. And all these little things are important to the to the character of it.
Academy Award winner Rick Baker is one of Hollywood's reigning masters of makeup effects. He transformed Eddie Murphy into a 300-pound man for The Nutty Professor and has created monsters for countless films, including An American Werewolf in London and the UFO-related Men in Black. Baker dismissed the tape as a fake.
Yeah, this doesn't fool me. I don't buy this. I think this is a puppet, and you've got a table in the foreground that's hiding the rest of its body. You've got some kind of whatever that instrument is in the foreground. It's also lit very mysteriously. I think if you were going to record this alien, you would want to see it, and you wouldn't want to hide it behind a table, and you would light it in a way that would show up much more than this. And this particular movement, this head-jerking movement here especially, looks very puppety to me. It looks a little overdone and very much like a guy with his hand inside this thing maneuvering it. I guess he's supposed to be ill here. Is that what's going on? It just looks like they went to a great deal of effort to hide as much of the anatomy other than the head on this puppet, and I just don't buy it. I would be willing to stake my reputation on the fact that I think this is a hoax. It's very interesting to see, though.
In Baker's opinion, there was no controversy at all.
It's a fake, in my opinion. We could build better. We have built better.
UFO expert Robert Dean, on the other hand, had no doubt whatsoever that the tape was authentic.
This is powerful because this is not a staged event. This is real.
In the 1960s, Robert O. Dean served as an Army intelligence analyst at NATO headquarters in Europe, where he claims to have seen first-hand evidence of alien beings and their artifacts. Retired from the Army, he is now a highly regarded UFO researcher and analyst. Dean was asked to view the tape and offer his expert opinion.
They're treating him like a piece of livestock, wiping his lips.
Calling on his own first-hand experience for comparison, Robert Dean was stunned and moved by what he saw.
That breaks my heart.
Notice how the people that knew it was real or had a feeling of it was real, they were emotionally moved by it. From the image analysts to the guy that actually brought the tape to the alien analyst here, even the visual effects artists, everyone but one guy pretty much was moved by it emotionally, but what was going on, what they were watching with the alien pretty much having difficulty in our atmosphere.
I think you've got yourself a piece of legitimate footage here, and I think you've got your hands on some pretty sensitive material. I don't know how the hell you got this. I don't know who you got it from, and frankly, I don't want to know who you got it from. But you got yourself a tiger by the tail with this footage. I would say, and I know that that's one of the things you ask of me, is that you've got yourself some legitimate footage of one of the little guys being interrogated and filmed. And there's a reality to it, and there's a sensitivity to it that literally breaks my heart. But I tell you very strongly, you've got something here that is very sensitive. Well, I know that the level of classification on this kind of a thing is so far damned above top secret that you can't imagine how sensitive this kind of thing is, and how delicate it is, and how tightly the government sits on anything like this.
Sean Morton looked for clues to the tape's authenticity in the technical details of the interview's setting.
Okay, there's a couple of interesting things about the tape right off the bat.
Morton tried to decipher the time code at the bottom of the screen.
First off, what you're looking at in the time code is DNI, is Department of Naval Intelligence. So Department of Naval Intelligence, this would probably be a file number 27. It could be a security level, however, because security levels are supposedly go up to Q36, or the highest ones that we know about. The first interesting thing about that is that I'm noticing what looks like a medical monitor, and look at how slowly and erratic the heartbeat is. The heartbeat is literally 1, 2. It's very, very erratic, and it looks as though the heartbeat, being as erratic as it is only about, from counting that, it looks like it's about 30 a minute or so.
Morton suggested an alternate explanation for the video's dim lighting.
I didn't
One of
catch
the
his
unusual
name.
things about most of these particular race of aliens is they are very, very sensitive to light. So a lot of these interviews are conducted in very darkened rooms.
To Morton's eye, many features of this alien dovetailed with accounts of other first-hand contactees.
Another strange thing about the physiognomy of these creatures is, as well, is if you will notice that the neck itself is not at the back of the head like a human being is. The neck is actually in the center of the head, which is what actually gives it problems holding its head and its neck up. Whatever this is, it's being taken, the interview is actually being done through a piece of glass, which is probably something somebody faking the photographs probably wouldn't think about. Right there we see that the creature appears to be choking. The dark eyes, in many cases, are actually a form of lens that guards the creature against untoward sunlight. It's a remarkable piece of footage. I mean, it's very, 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 very interesting. If it's a hoax, it's very well done. If it's not, then I would say it's probably revolutionary.
Another expert who was asked to examine the tape was Michael Hesseman, one of Europe's leading UFO researchers and author of the international bestseller Beyond Roswell.
When I got the first information about the alien interview footage, and when I saw the first picture, I said there might be a connection to a real incident.
Hesseman was intrigued both by the alien's appearance and by Victor's claim that the being arrived at Area 51 in 1989.
If it is authentic, it might be the most significant film ever published, ever shown on television.
For several years now, Hesseman has been investigating reports that the South African Air Force shot down a flying saucer in the Kalahari Desert in 1989. According to Hesseman's sources, 2 survivors were retrieved from the downed saucer. One was sent to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio, and the other to Area 51. The extraterrestrial in Victor's tape bears a striking resemblance to descriptions of the Kalahari ET, and the timing of its appearance at Area 51 is consistent with the South African incident.
If you see the drawings we have of the Kalahari alien and the descriptions we have, it seems to be the same being. And the Kalahari incident puts the alien interview footage into a context and gives it at least a probability that it might be real. It might be the real stuff. We just don't know.
Whitley Strieber, best-selling author of Communion, claims to have had numerous personal contacts with alien beings. He has become the de facto spokesman for the growing number of people who claim to have been abducted by extraterrestrials. The nationally syndicated television program Strange Universe asked Strieber and several other abductees to view the alien interview tape. What Strieber saw left him profoundly shaken. Strieber would not agree to be interviewed on camera for this program, but on Strange Universe, he had this to say.
A shame for mankind is right. For the simple fact that why people were so, emotionally moved by watching the video, because like the guy said, treating him like a piece of cattle. Like, imagine if his leaders, or imagine if his big homies were looking at this and, they said, "Oh, you're doing that? Okay. Dominoes."
On May 23, 1997, Victor gave a radio interview on the nationally syndicated show Coast to Coast AM with Art Bell. Speaking by telephone from an unknown location, Victor answered questions from host Art Bell and his guest, UFO expert Sean Morton.
From the Kingdom of Nye, Coast to Coast AM continues with Art Bell.
It is going to be a very interesting morning. Let's see if we've got Victor on the line. Victor, are you there?
I'm here.
Welcome to the program, Victor.
Afterwards, this is what Bell and Morton had to say about Victor's credibility.
What a hell of an interview, huh?
Boy, oh boy, talk about making history on the radio. It was, as far as I could tell, he answered every question properly, as far as exactly where the locations are, to the descriptions of the the transports, the 737s, to the CTS-43s, the retinal scans, the 5 levels at S4.
A veteran of countless controversial interviews, Art Bell still found himself impressed by his encounter with Victor.
In the first, I think, half hour, I sensed that I was getting a kind of a runaround, or that I was not satisfied with the quality of the answers that I was being given. But as the interview progressed, and Victor, to some degree, began to relax, I began to get a different sense, and that was that he was telling me the truth. I think Victor was scared. I think Victor really is scared. And so my judgment of the interview after about the first, maybe 20 minutes, half hour, is that we began to get some real information. It was a significant milestone. There's no question about that in broadcasting.
If the government has really been in contact with superior aliens, wouldn't we see some evidence of it? For instance, amazing new scientific discoveries.
Limitless free energy? A cure for cancer? We might, if the government's motive were the betterment of mankind. The government's motive is control. And just as much as they crave control, they fear loss of control. Knowledge is power, but power does not necessarily confer competence. The people at the top of this program are intellectually very average. They're not capable of making proper use of what's been handed to them, but they have no intention of letting anyone else ever get a chance to solve the puzzle. And let's not forget there's also the real possibility that the government is being manipulated by the extraterrestrials for their own purposes.
You could have released this tape to the news media, but you insisted on being paid for it. Doesn't that cast doubt on your own motives?
Yes, and I was aware of that going in, but that's a cross I'm prepared to bear. I find it disgusting that the most important event in human history is being kept secret simply because certain unimaginative officials have the power to do so. But at the same time, I do see the irony in my own actions. All I can say is, had I had the choice, I would not have insisted on profiting from this revelation. But since by lifting this veil, I've endangered not only my career, but possibly my life, I felt the need for some small measure of monetary freedom to deal with any eventualities. And let me say, I could have demanded significantly more money than I did if I had been willing to compromise my anonymity. There have been other whistleblowers who jumped at the chance to become celebrities, which I think casts even more doubt on their motives than some people may be casting on mine.
Do you believe your life is in danger as a result of making this tape public?
I would hope not. I would like to think my government is a little more civilized than that. But at the same time, I don't intend to give them the chance to prove me wrong. At any rate, to a certain extent, I'm counting on being disbelieved. Obviously, they would like me to be perceived as a hoaxer. If something were to happen to me, if I should die suddenly in a freak accident, it would obviously lend credence to my story, and I assume they understand that and will act or not act accordingly.
Why should anyone believe this tape is authentic?
Use your own judgment. That's all any of us can do. There's been so much secrecy and disinformation over the last 50 years that it's become impossible to prove anything in the face of official denial. Of course, the flip side is nobody really believes anything the government says.
Robert Dean heads a growing movement lobbying Congress to release former NASA intelligence and military officials from their security oaths so they can talk openly about U.S. involvement with UFOs and aliens.
As early as '49, your government knew we were dealing with extraterrestrial intelligence. And then it sort of blew up more and more. Every year there were more discoveries, more conclusions, more contacts. And as you probably know, we have indeed retrieved crashed hardware, and we have reverse engineered it, and we have indeed been flying some of that hardware in this base not too many miles outside of Nellis, near Las Vegas.
Dean believes the time has come for the government to tell the people what it knows.
The truth has got to come out. We're over 30 years too late. The people not only have a right to know, they have a need to know. And damn it, I stand in this belief, and I will say this and stand by this till the day I die. Congress has the responsibility, Congress has the obligation to the people, to the Constitution, and to the nation.
Did this alien die?
I can't answer that with certainty. I do know the interviews came to an end. Whether the being died or was retired, and I don't mean that in the spy thriller sense of having it killed, I mean retired from the interview process. I just don't know. I'm fairly certain it didn't go home, at least not in the physical sense. But these beings, they don't seem to be very concerned about dying or avoiding death.
Why do you think that is?
Maybe they know what comes after death with more confidence than we do. Maybe there's another vessel waiting for them on the other side.
The other side?
Yes, which may in fact be where they come from in the first place. I've heard the claims that they come from Zeta Reticula or the Pleiades, but it hasn't been established that they come from out there at all. Their saucers may not travel through space as we know it. They may fold in from another dimension, another reality.
You make them sound almost supernatural, like angels or devils.
Supernatural is just a term for aspects of nature we don't understand. For many people, they certainly do serve the functions of both angels and devils, forces we can't comprehend. Have you had enough of me? I think I've earned my money.
Is seeing believing?
That's a real highway, by the way. But real quick, let's go to special edition real quick. Extraterrestrial Highway is very real. Real quick, let's listen to the ending part of this to where you literally hear Victor in fear for his life. And pretty much, even if you were to question any type of credibility, you won't after you hear this. Right, because he can't go down. He can't go down certain avenues of questioning.
I was under the impression that it would only be you and your camera.
All right, Victor, duly noted. But you did come to us and request this interview.
Yes.
And you did request money, which you've been paid.
Yes.
Per your insistence, it was just to be me. Yes. And I'm not a professional cameraman, so I did bring along a second cameraman to shoot some additional footage so we have something to cut to. Okay, on B camera?
B camera set.
Okay, here we go. So, Victor, here we are.
Well, I must say that I never expected to hear myself called Victor again, or to find myself in disguise in front of a camera again.
It's now been 11 years since we last conducted that interview.
Yes, the Art Bell interview you arranged for me.
In May 1997.
As the interview progressed, I began to get a different sense, and that was that he was scared. I think Victor really is scared.
That was a pleasant experience, I say with some sarcasm.
Looking back on it now, 11 years later, you didn't want to do it.
I did not want to do it on the day that I did it. You and that rocket man foisted it upon me after we had made an agreement for one on-screen appearance in your little documentary. And then somehow that agreement metastasized into an ongoing series of promotional appearances, which was not part of the agreement.
You agreed to do that one phone interview with Art Bell Coast to Coast to promote the video at the time.
Which was a live interview, and I had made it abundantly clear that I was not to be put in a position of revealing my whereabouts in a live situation.
Again, Victor, with all due respect, you knew that the Art Bell show was live.
You say that now, that's not how I remember it, but in any case, it's a thing of the past.
Well, in any event, you contacted us for this interview.
This situation has not been of my choosing. If I came to you and requested, as you say, in fact, I find that characterization insulting. I did not request to give you information. I offered you information. Yes, I did demand payment. Certainly I demanded it. I would not have been given it had I not demanded it. You are the businessmen. You are the filmmakers, the video makers, the documentarians. You and that rocket man, you have made whatever profits have been made over the last decade off of the... I can't think of a reason why I would want to be giving you information were it not for the money. Certainly any illusions I had that my information might actually spur the government have been sadly mistaken. It's been 11 years since I brought out that tape. What follow-up has there been? Who among these so-called ufologists, these self-proclaimed investigators, show me one of them that's demanded information about S4 under the Freedom of Information Act. Show me one of them that has seriously attempted to confirm or deny the existence of the alien interview program. All they care about is talking among themselves and making videotapes, making documentaries, promoting themselves.
Do you at least feel vindicated that no one has conclusively debunked the tape?
What the only vindication that I could imagine would be if the government finally revealed all that they know about these aliens.
So are you saying that the internet truth seekers are not living up to your expectations?
That is an understatement. Well, I should say they perhaps are living up to my expectations, since my expectations were admittedly low to begin with. All the days in which people took b.l.a.c seriously, and who is that person in your documentary? That Morton character?
Sean David Morton.
Yes, a researcher. What has he discovered to corroborate or debunk the interview since that time? He was more than happy to take it at face value. Then, when he too was being paid, I assume you paid him as well as me. All of these people are charlatans. All of these people are at best hobbyists and at worst professional con men.
Well, I'm assuming that you've seen the finished product. What did you think of Bob Dean's interview, the retired NATO commander? Well,
he took the video at face value, but that was a case of being correct by accident.
Another way that they pretty much do predictive programming in video games. And crazy how it's a video game called Final Fantasy VII Rebirth at that.
What about Rick Baker? Rick Baker's won Academy Awards.
Rick Baker is a professional makeup artist, a makeup businessman. It's in his best interest to say that he can do much better than the real thing. And that other makeup man, the same goes for him.
John Criswell.
John Criswell, yes. They both.
So that was the name you were trying to hear, John Criswell.
They both were happy to brag that they could create a more realistic alien. Fine. Well, where is it? In the Men in Black movies? In that ridiculous alien autopsy footage? Show me a more authentic alien than the one in that interview. By all means, if these makeup people are capable of creating a more realistic alien, then show me, compare it, place it before the public. These people are show people. Everything for them is hyperbole. My contempt for the viewers of your documentary over the last 11 years knows no bounds. They've been like children, mocking it, or on the other hand, credulously accepting it with no attempt to evaluate the material on its own merits, or to discover any new material to support or debunk it. This is not a joke. This is not a hoax. Certainly I'm staking my reputation on it. If an anonymous individual in a rubber mask could be said to be staking his reputation on anything, I challenge these ufologists to debunk me, discover my identity. If they really believe that the alien interview footage is a hoax, prove it. Show where it was faked. If they believe that the alien in that footage is a puppet, prove it. Find the puppet maker. If they believe that I am a hoaxer, prove it. Discover my real identity. It certainly doesn't matter to me at this point.
You need some water?
Let me say, no. And let us finish this.
All right. Let's move on to some new areas. How do you respond about rumors in the UFO community that Cheney and Rumsfeld have known about the EBEs since the Nixon administration?
Well, certainly Cheney knows everything there is to know within the government. There's not much that is kept secret from the general public that Cheney does not know. As for Rumsfeld is a bombastic clown, but he has certainly shown quite a bit of interest in new technologies, shall we say, I will say this to those UFO researchers who seem to be sitting on their hands waiting for someone else to bring them information. If you do your research and discover where Rumsfeld was in the middle of March of this year, I think you will learn a few things that perhaps you would like to know.
Would you care to elaborate?
No, I would not care to elaborate, and I frankly don't think that you, the producers of this documentary, would like for me to elaborate.
Do you think that President Bush has been kept up to date on our ET program, or that Cheney has kept all the information from him?
President Bush, now there is a puppet. There is your artificial marionette. And no one seems to be able to identify him as an artificial president. Why should they be able to recognize a real alien when they see one? President Bush is irrelevant to the process of government, and certainly irrelevant to the decision-making that goes on from the vice president's office.
While we're talking about the current administration, what are your thoughts about 9/11?
I'm not going to talk about 9/11.
You're not going to talk about 9/11?
9/11 is like the Bermuda Triangle. 9/11 is not part of this story. Shall we say that?
Are the EBEs still at the base in Utah?
The base at Utah.
In the Art Bell interview in 1997, you alluded, I believe more than alluded, to the fact that the EBEs were moved from Area 51
which has been
to the base in Utah.
Yes.
Are the EBEs, in your opinion, with your knowledge, are they still at the base in Utah?
The EBEs, to my knowledge, are all, at this time, deceased, if you want to call it that. Before we go any further, I just want to say to you, not to your viewers, but to you, and to that rocket person, that this will be the last time you ever see me. This will be my last statement, bar none. And this time I can say that with conviction, because it seems that this container has reached its expiration date. I am apparently not long for this world. So, this will be my final testament.
Pretty much he was letting you know that he was dying. And whether or not he was sick or not could have also had a play on, or should I say, could have correlated to him doing the interview 11 years prior to him. Prior to sitting there. So he mentioned before he started this that this is 11 years. This is 11 years fast forward from him doing the Art Bell interview. So pretty much, the government, even if they saw that or even had any type of knowledge of who this guy might be, they said, okay, anybody that had access to that shit, we dismissing. We are removing. Okay? You get them sick, you kill them off, do whatever the fuck you have to. Whoever was in that room that day or had some type of access to that footage is gone. Art Bell should have not gotten that footage. Whoever the fuck was in that room, we killing off. That's why he was able to be on the run for quite some time, of course, and now he's saying that, okay, this vessel is, of course, coming to an end. If you notice, when he asked him for the water, he wasn't necessarily saying that, no, this interview must go on. He was actually, it sounded like he was communicating to someone else that might be in his ear. Almost like he was responding to someone telling him, yo, you got to wrap this shit up. And he was saying, no, we have to finish this. So he pretty much knows that he's also being watched at this point. That's why he's so damn scared. He knows that the government is watching him and divulging this information.
And what is your final testament?
Thank you for the compassion. As I intimated on the Art Bell interview, my involvement with S4 and the alien interview program did come to an end in 1997. And I have not been involved with the Black Ops program for more than a decade. However, I have been in contact with certain individuals who are still involved in attempting to make sense of the information that was gathered before the aliens discorporated. And I'm here to tell you, gentlemen, that if I am not long for this world, you are not much longer. As the Bible thumpers say, the end times are upon us.
The end of the world?
The end of the world. We have been tested and found wanting. The aliens came, they presented themselves to humanity. They were taken and held and questioned and allowed to die. And now the reckoning is at hand. Let me give a task to these so-called investigators, these ufologists. Look into the record and attempt to determine where Donald Rumsfeld was on March 23rd of this year.
What is the significance of this Rumsfeld date that you keep referring to?
Donald Rumsfeld has been aware of the alien interviews at least since 1974, in the last days of the Nixon cabal. And even when he was out of government, he managed to keep his hand in. But it was not until the bogus telepath program was finally exposed within the secret Black Ops operation that the true translation, that the true meaning of the alien communication was made clear to him. And since then, I think you will find he has lost all interest in the United States and trivial earthly power. His sole interest now is to find a way to be one of those who are taken off when the end comes.
So what you're saying is the biblical end times are upon us? Is that what you're telling me?
It's rather childish to call them biblical, since the Bible itself is simply a smokescreen. These aliens come from the universe of science, not the universe of religion. Religion is a deliberate disinformation campaign started by those who first encountered the aliens and first kept that knowledge to themselves. Donald Rumsfeld is merely one of the last of the line of those who try to maintain personal control over information that should have been made public to the entire human race. And now that he understands exactly what it is these aliens have been trying to tell us, he has completely lost interest in the rest of humanity. His sole concern is to be one of the few, one of the what he considers to be the elite, the elect specimens, if you will, the elect specimen, who are taken off the earth before the final trumpet sounds.
Well, I have to tell you, this sounds an awful lot like Armageddon. I mean, 2012, the Mayan calendar.
The Zolkeen calendar is another inaccurate representation of what we are talking about. The date 2012 is not accurate. The Mayans considered themselves to be far better mathematicians than they actually were. In point of fact, the date is very close, but not 2012. Not 2012. Not within my lifetime that's left of it. And certainly within yours. Let's just say that I wouldn't plan a 20th anniversary edition of this documentary. My head is a beehive.
You're not really saying,
Après-moi le déluge. Le déluge solaire. I won't be here for it, but you, gentlemen, will. Was it Seneca? I think it was... No, it was Strato who said, "When I am gone, let earth and fire mix. It will mean naught to me."
And with that being said, yeah, shit about to hit the fan. Because it's been said that 2030 is supposedly the end times date. 2030. Yes, solar flares. Solar flares. Pretty much what you saw also in the Iron Sky movie. That's why they keep calling it Iron Sky, okay? It's pretty much telling you that the apocalyptic event that's going to happen with the 7 trumpets and the meteorites hitting Earth and this shit just going, kaput. Yeah, coronal mass ejection. It's pretty much due to what we did with the aliens. It's what we did trying to play God and learning who they are, and then keeping them captive. And them pretty much their higher ups are saying, "Hey, enough is enough. Your world needs a reset anyway. Allow us to fucking give it to you." So we're pretty much going through our own evacuation with the Civil War happening, or should I say, upon us. Political end times, pretty much. The World War III, things of that nature. Thus the need for Project Bluebeam. Because the need for Project Bluebeam is what he's talking about. Project Bluebeam is pretty much to gather all of us up and take us away for when the meteorite happens, okay? And those that are going to be left behind, that's the book, Left Behind, those that are going to be left behind pretty much are going to think they're in hell or Armageddon. But yeah, there ain't no think. They are going to be. When the 7 trumpets sound, it's pretty much the trial of tribulation for man. Okay? That's what he's talking about when the final trumpet sounds. The final trumpet for man. Okay? So, in short, this is one of those things where, you don't have to take it with a grain of salt. You ain't got to take it with a grain of salt. You just got to know the truth is out there. You have to know the truth is out there, and if you're willing to learn it, you have to do a search for it. And listen, we have so many things that got confirmed tonight. It's unreal. I could have gone further into the John Lear interview where one of the guys that actually work at Area 51 was also saying like, "Yo," matter of fact, I'll play that real quick before we get out of here. I'll play that real quick. This is on the John Lear show.
Hello and welcome to On the Record. Those of you who joined us last week were probably amazed, as I was, by some of the latest research in the field of UFOs. There is so much to talk about, however, we were unable to fit it all into one program, so my guest again this week is UFO researcher, former state Senate candidate, and award-winning pilot John Lear. Mr. Lear, nice to have you here again.
Always a pleasure to be here, George.
To begin with, we have this concept of the people from other planets as little green men. Are they green from what you know? Are they all the same, or we got different kinds of them?
George, there's at least 70 different species, and probably more. But yes, as odd as it sounds, there are little green men. That's not the ones we usually see, though. We see the little gray ones. They're about 4.5 feet tall. And we see the ones that are called the Nordics. They're about 7 feet tall, look like us, but they're invariably blonde hair and blue-eyed. They're one of the species that we have on ice. One of their crashes we recovered.
Obviously with different species.
Blonde-haired, blue-eyed. Well, don't that sound familiar? So, also, the movie did play on that as well. Remember, they made the Virgin Mary, or should I say the woman that was playing the mother of the main character, what was her name? Blondie. Okay? And you notice Blondie was also an alien. Okay? Blondie was also an alien, right? Blonde-haired, blue-eyed. Now, also, what did you hear him just say? It's one of the ones that we have underneath the ice. He didn't say where underneath the ice, but we already saw in the movie and in many different depictions, as well as what we watched with the video, they're talking about Antarctica. So he pretty much just said, yo, we got shit hiding in Antarctica.
They have different motives. I mean, are there good aliens and bad aliens from what you know?
Good aliens and bad aliens and all kinds of ways and reasons for interacting with us.
And what are some of the reasons? Why would they be here?
Genetic experiments, trying to, there's a misconception here. People think that our space brothers would bring us, good things and teach us how to get rid of all our diseases. And, if you stop and think about it, that may not be the best thing, because if you had a society without any disease and everybody starts living 150 years, that creates a lot of problems. So they would not meddle in that way.
You believe, in part, that the movies E.T., Close Encounters of the Third Kind, were not entirely just the creative products of some Hollywood director, that maybe there's more to that. Why don't you explain?
They were carefully guided by representatives from MJ12, who is this organization that is in charge of the cover-up, in order to get us ready for the release of the information that there are indeed aliens. And in both those movies, they used small little creatures and in order to get us ready for this release of information.
To prepare us that the idea of benevolent aliens from outer space are going to help.
So John Lear's pretty much telling you that even back, remember this is back in the 90s when this interview was done. Okay, so he's pretty much telling you back then, like, hey, the government is using predictive programming to pretty much let you know that, yeah, we seen aliens and we know that they fucking here, but we can't tell y'all just yet because y'all gonna go haywire about if y'all knew aliens was actually fucking here. So we've been pretty much just leaking little shit down the pipeline to make y'all understand that, hey, these motherfuckers are here, but we want y'all to get used to seeing them. We want you to get used to what they are and how they act. You know, we haven't done much finding out what the fuck they are and how they act, but when we do know, we'll tell you eventually.
Unfortunately, they're not so benevolent. So they made probably one of the most disastrous mistakes when E.T. was put out. At that time was before we discovered what I call the double cross or the grand deception. And they were trying to get us used to the benevolent little creatures, but that isn't the case.
Why don't you take a couple of minutes? Now, you've done as much research on UFOs as just about anyone, I'd imagine, and if you haven't done it, you know people who have. Where did it all start, and how have we put this picture together of where they came from and why they're here?
Well, the whole thing started in July 2nd, 1947. That was the first crash.
First crash of an alien spaceship.
Of an alien spaceship. July 6th is when they recovered it and sent it to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. July 7th is when they held the press conference and told the people it was a weather balloon, which the press bought hook, line, and sinker. September of that year, President Truman established MJ12, and the purpose of that was to study the saucers and cover up the existence of UFOs.
And you say we recovered alien bodies from that incident, right?
4 from that particular crash, yes.
And what'd they do with them?
They autopsied them. Dr. Detlef Bronk was the chief surgeon, so to speak. He was the one that named them EBEs. It stands for extraterrestrial biological entities. And we captured 3 live EBEs. They were numbered in their order of capture: EBE-1, EBE-2, and EBE-3.
Where did we capture? Where did this happen?
In different crashes. EBE-1 lived with an Air Force colonel between 1949 and 1952. The EBEs are kept in
That's also where they got the name for the movie E.T. Okay, they played on the EBE word and just said E.T. Of course, you know, standing short for extraterrestrial. They took out they took EBE and just made E.T. and said, ha ha, we can trickle something down the line and say, hey, this is what one of these little motherfuckers look like.
Electromagnetic facility called a YY-2. It was designed by a Dr. Eric Wang, who worked directly for Dr. Kissinger, who has been in this cover-up since the very beginning. The reason they had to create an electromagnetic facility is the fact that the EBEs are so advanced, they're at least 500 million years advanced from us, and probably more. They can move by thought.
Move by thought.
And they can also disappear. But they can't move by thought through electromagnetic facilities. So they built this facility. There was 2, one in Los Alamos and one either at Edwards or up at the test site.
At Groom Lake, Nevada.
At Groom Lake. Now there's still one EBE still living, EBE-3, and there is a videotape that eventually is going to be released to the public, and it's an interview with him. As hard as that may sound, as hard as that may be to believe, there is a videotape of an interview with EBE3.
And what is this language that the interviewers are?
I haven't seen the tape, so I don't know. But on this trip I told you I took gathering all this information, a guy in Albuquerque handed me 25 secret CIA memos. And if anything can be humorous in all of this, one of these memos, in the body of the text, it said, by the way, EBE3 wants to see the ocean. We better make the arrangements or he'll disappear again. So while he couldn't get out of this facility, he could make himself disappear and cause him a lot of trouble.
Now, can they exist among us? Is that what you're saying, or do they have to have this special environment?
They have special environment, special air. It's my understanding they can only last about 20 minutes in this air.
You were saying also these gray ones are the ones that we see most of the time, and you said that most of that there are a lot of different motives for them being here. The gray ones, what kind of a deal we got going with them? Is that the bunch that you suggest we've made a deal with for military technology?
Well, I think we made a deal with them, and their ultimate, what they want to do is regenerate their own race. Now, apparently, they've either had some kind of nuclear accident, or they're on the backside of a evolutionary genetic curve, and they're going downhill instead of uphill. In other words, in the autopsies, of which I have 2, we found out that their digestive system is atrophied. They can't eat through their mouth anymore. You know how they eat? Well, these cattle mutilations, they take the hormones and the enzymes from those cattle and they spread it on their skin, and their skin absorbs the nutrients and then excretes the waste back through their skin.
Sort of like the viril that we were just talking about in the movie as well. Now, what he's also describing here are the gray aliens, right? Now, the gray aliens are actually the reptilians. If you think about it, they describe this exact description that he's talking about is pretty much like the Nagas that they were talking about in Sundung. The reptilians, pretty much, okay? And these gray aliens are a little bit taller, of course. These are a little bit taller, a little bit more aggressive, and as you just heard him also say, they're trying to regenerate their race. This is what we were just literally looking at with the coming race. What he is literally talking about right now are the unfriendly reptilians that we made a deal with, that we supposedly made a deal with. Remember how in the movie, the Jobsus guy made a deal with the reptilians, huh?
And if you read Whitley Strieber's book or listen to him talk, he talks about when he's seen them doing this to their skin, and they're scraping the waste off.
Now, these cattle mutilations, there's been a film made about that, and perhaps in a couple of minutes we can take a look at some excerpts of that.
Yeah, Strange Harvest was a good one, but another thing that happened here on March 4th, there was a documentary released on the best UFO photos that have been taken so far, including 1 minute and 38 seconds of videotape. Now, what happened is in November, this guy took these photos, took it into the TV station. They thought it was great, but nobody would believe it. So they spent 3 months checking the validity of the, authenticating the videotape and checking out the credibility of the witness. And when they had it all down, they put out this documentary, 30 minutes. I mean, it's ironclad. They're here. But do you think it got on the network? No, it was just showed locally in Pensacola.
We have some of that, and perhaps when we come back, we can take a look at it. So stay with us for more of On the Record.
So, of course, we don't necessarily have to go into that, but because they're pretty much just going to look at a bunch of pictures. But, yeah, they're here, and they aren't necessarily friendly.